We have a giant in Sacramento that needs to be taken down, and it's going to take an anomaly to do it. Something that looks different, sounds different, has a different story. My middle name happens to be David, so I think I'm uniquely equipped to take down giants. But I'll give you a little bit of background. Anybody who knows me knows I'm an engager. I'd rather have conversation than to stand up here and talk at you for, half an hour. So I'm going to give you some background, who I am, why I'm doing this, my heart, my vision for California. And then maybe we can turn it into a town hall and get you guys to ask some questions and we can have meaningful conversation, unlike a lot of politicians do. So that's what I'm hoping for. So I'll give you a little bit of background. One of the questions that I get asked all the time, why are you doing this, right? Because I'm not a politician. I'm a CEO. I'm from the private sector. So people ask all the time, why are you doing this? And no, it's not to be in politics. I never wanted to be in politics. I still don't want to be in politics. But we have a state to save. And I have a family. 2 of my kids are here today. My youngest daughter, Cameron, and my youngest son, Nico. They're definitely part of the why, right? But I'll give you some background. So a little bit about me, who I am. My grandfather fled communist Cuba in the 50s. He came to the United States in pursuit of the American dream. Now, if you're born here in the United States, we talk about the American dream. It seems cliche, but everywhere else around the world, the American dream is something tangible, something real. And my grandfather knew that the United States would present a better future for his family. So he saved up enough money for 1 plane ticket. He actually had to leave my pregnant grandmother and my 3 aunts behind. And he came and he ended up at LAX with a telephone number, an address, and a man's name. That led him to Watts. Now, I don't know if you guys know Watts. It's not Temecula. It's definitely not that. And back then it was even worse. So my grandfather shows up at this doorstep. The man gives him a bed and a job. He spends the next 6 months working hard to save up enough money to send for my grandmother, my newly born father, and my 3 aunts. So they came to California shortly after. Now, my grandfather did not want to depend on the government. The last thing he wanted to do was to be dependent on government. So he wanted to be an entrepreneur, and he knew this was the place to do it. And so he saved up enough money, and he bought himself a metal finishing line. Now, I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's some of the most blue-collar work you can get. It's plating metal against rust. And, you okay? It's plating metal against rust. It's very toxic work, very blue-collar work, but that's all he knew how to do. So he started a small little business. His name was Roberto. He started Bob's Plating over 60 years ago, and that company still exists today. My father runs it out of South Central off Alameda and 55th Street. So it's a successful company, not by Forbes standards, but it provided what we needed. Not everything we wanted, but it provided everything we needed. My father took that company over when he was 18, still runs it today. When I turned 18, I thought my path was also in the family business. So my dad gave me a job at 18 at that company. 3 months later, I was fired. If you guys remember the O.J. Simpson trial, that was America's first reality TV show. And I would go to work every day and I would watch the O.J. Simpson trial. It wasn't too long after that my father realized I was doing more TV watching than working. So he fired me and he said, look, this is going to be the best thing for you. You're going to find your own way. There's only enough room in this company for 1 Trimino and you're not it. So it was actually one of the best things he did for me. That was around when I was 18. At 19, I met my wife, Jennifer. She was 17, I was 19. We've been together for 26 years. We have 5 beautiful children, 4 biological, 1 adopted, and we were foster care parents for a season of our life as well. Soon after we started our family, still trying to find work and trying to find my way, we settled into a small little apartment in Downey. Our first meal in that apartment was hamburger helper without the meat. We couldn't afford the meat, the ground beef, and we weren't going to ask her parents for help, and we weren't going to ask my dad for help. He had just fired me. So we were trying to make it on our own, and we had very, very humble, modest beginnings. In fact, our dishes and our cups were the ones that you win at carnivals. Do you guys remember that carnival game where you throw dimes into saucers, and if you land, that was how we began. We had a cardboard box for a coffee table. We had a plastic outdoor dining set for our dining table. Somebody lent us a refrigerator that worked and didn't work at times. Very humble beginnings, very humble start. But I knew that, like my grandfather who had instilled that entrepreneurial spirit in me, that I would find my own way. So a couple years after that, which was 20 years ago this past November, I started a little company in Downey, California. Small little marketing firm, 200 square foot office, 2 IKEA desks, a fax machine, a computer, and the Yellow Pages. And for you young people, the Yellow Pages was Google before we had internet. So I started that company. Over the next 20 years, with a lot of hard work, sacrifice, a lot of God's grace, I built that company up to what Inc. magazine just called one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America. Thank you. I did that in 2018, but I did it again in 2020, which is almost impossible to do because of the amount of growth that you have to show. In 2020, I did that in the height of a pandemic when my industry was collapsing. Ad agencies had gone through, 80% of ad agencies had gone through 3 rounds of layoffs. Our industry was being annihilated. We tripled our physical footprint, went from 5,000 square feet to 15, almost 20,000 square feet, doubled our staff, and had our best year ever. Why am I telling you this story? Because going into 2021, I had reached so many new milestones in my life. The wind was in our sails, and I had every reason to be excited about the year to come. Marriage was doing fantastic. Kids were doing well. We thought the pandemic was behind us, and I had the best year in business ever. And then I started to smell smoke. My daughter had friends that started going back to school, and they would talk about the things that were being taught, critical race theory, sexuality, all this radical ideology at our schools. I saw churches that were still shut down, that weren't reopened. I saw businesses. Every day I would drive into work, and I would see businesses that were shut down that would never reopen. We're talking about 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation companies that will never reopen. I saw the attack on our medical freedom. I just saw California as this house that was on fire. And I turned to my wife and I said, we got to go. We got to get out of here. Everyone was leaving. Texas, Florida, basically everywhere they could get out of California, they were leaving. And I told her, look, we need to pack up and we need to get out of here before this house collapses on itself. I don't want to be here to see what's happening. I lost all hope. And she said to me, she says, no, you need to stop and think about what we're leaving behind. And as any good husband would do, I said, absolutely not. I said, no way. I said, you're crazy. We have to get out of here. The house is on fire. She says, no, I want you to really think about what we're leaving behind. It took her a month of praying, a bunch of other people praying for us, and a bunch of pleading with me. I finally turned around and said, fine, what are we leaving behind? And God opened my eyes. When I looked back, I didn't just see a burning building anymore. I saw a burning building with 40 million people trapped inside. And when I looked at those 40 million faces of people in California that would be stuck, I started to see familiar faces. I started to see my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, my nephews, my nieces, my employees, our church community, people we built a life with. And just as importantly, millions of other faces of people who would not be able to leave. They couldn't just up and leave, couldn't afford to leave, had too much here to leave behind. And so I started wrestling with God and I said, what do you want me to do about it? Like, I get it. We can't leave. I taught my kids how to be fighters. We've overcome adversity. I've always told them, if you can't be the solution, or if you can't find the solution, be the solution. And just because we could up and leave doesn't mean we should. And I said, fine, what does that mean? And he said, I want you to run back into that building and save as many people as you can. And so for us, we looked at it and said, well, what does that look like? How do we do that? For us, it meant a run for governor. Not because I want to be a politician. We don't need any more politicians in California. California is the 6th largest economy on the planet. We need a CEO as much as we need a governor. We need someone from the private sector. We need a father, a businessman, somebody who stands on strong conservative values. We need everything other than a politician. And so I decided to run back in that house. We talked about it as a family, and we decided that we were going to do this. But let me tell you something. This house is big, it has many floors, and there's far too many people for any one person to save. And a lot of times we talk about this great revival that's happening in California, but I think it's a great recruitment. I think God wants all of us in this fight. Every single person here has a reason to see Newsom out of office. Every single person here has a vested interest in somebody taking down, arguably, the most powerful political dynasty of our time. Everybody has a role to play in this fight. I've decided what my role is. You guys have to decide what your role is. And everybody is watching. So I've been to Cuba about 7 times in the last 5 years. I have family there, but I don't know them too well. We have made friendships, though, with some people in Cuba that are like family to me. One gentleman in particular, his name is Abel. He calls himself Super Mario. He is a cab driver in Cuba. He's actually an engineer, but in Cuba, you don't get paid for that kind of skill set. You make more money as a cab driver than you would as an engineer. So he's an engineer driving cabs, and we made friends with him. He's become like a brother to me. A few months ago, there was an uprising in Cuba where the citizens tried to go out into the street, fight for liberty, fight for freedom, and the government shut that down in a matter of hours, cut off all communication with the outside world, shut down cell service, internet. They went dark for months. Didn't hear from him for a while, wondered if he was okay. And I knew he had just given birth to a son a year ago, his first son, who had just turned a year old. A week and a half ago, I'm driving to an event, and he calls me. My wife is in the car. And he's so happy to hear my voice. He finally got internet service, and he told me, he's like, brother, I see what you're doing in California. He's like, I have access to Facebook. I get to see what you're doing on Facebook. I see all your videos. He says, I'm sitting here next to my son who just turned a year. He says, you have to win. And what he was communicating to me was he knew that if we don't win in California, if freedom doesn't survive in California and in the United States, his son will never know what it's like to live as a free man. And so he's sitting there in Cuba, huddled around his computer, watching what we're doing on Facebook, hoping and praying that we win, that we accomplish this goal. And Reagan said it best, right? If we lose freedom here, there is no place on earth that we can run to. And so this fight is critically important. The fight for governor, the race for governor in 2022 is the most important race in the nation by far, which then makes it the most important race on earth. We have to win. And the only way we're going to win is by doing things radically different than we've ever done before. That doesn't mean we have to be radicals. We just have to take a radically different approach, which means we have to put forth a candidate that doesn't look like these career politicians, a candidate that better reflects the diversity that exists within California, a candidate that represents families. So for me, you got to understand something. This is personal. What you guys are going through as business owners, I'm a business owner. I know exactly what you're facing. As a parent, look at my kids over there. I know exactly what you're going through. My daughter's 15. She's still in high school. I know what's happening in our schools. I know the attack on our families. I know the attack on our children. I know the bounty on their heads. It's personal to me. I go to church. I know the attack on our church. I know exactly what's at stake here. So understand that this fight for me is personal. I have absolutely no desire of being a lifelong politician. I plan on going there, cleaning house, undoing a lot of what's been done, and then passing the baton 4 years later to somebody that's relevant at that time. And that's the way it should be. These lifelong career politicians that go from office to office to office, that get, compromised with special interest, we need something different. I am that thing that's different. And I hope that you'll get behind what we're doing. I hope that you'll stand up, find your role in this fight, join me on this mission, because if together we stand, united we will rise. So I just want to thank you guys for having me out here today. I want to make myself available to answer any questions you have, because my story is real, what we're doing is authentic, our intentions are pure, and I want to engage you. So thank you for having me. I appreciate you coming out, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you.